I'm going to talk about Bewusstseins. Can you hear me all right? Sound okay?
No. We're trying to.
Okay, so I'll just continue. So Bewusstseinskultur, what is that supposed to be? Just translates to a culture concerned with consciousness. And my take on Bewusstseinskultur, my contribution, let me shortly say this, is this new journal that's coming up, The Philosophy of the Mind Sciences. It's an open access journal with a great kind of editorial advisory board, and a few editors-in-chief. One of them is sitting right in front of you. What we're doing is trying to do some, cross-pollination between philosophy and the empirical mind sciences, and contribute this to a larger audience by having an open access and with no costs for anybody. So look out for this. The next big issue will be on ego dissolutions, which might be of fun of you, and another might in the future be about Bewusstseinskultur. So the first question you should ask maybe, what actually is Bewusstseinskultur and what isn't it? There's a very, I would say, intuitive understanding about what Bewusstseinskultur might be, right? So first, Bewusstseinskultur can be a commentary to Funktionskultur. So Bewusstseinskultur, a culture concerned with consciousness, versus a culture more concerned with functioning, right? So while Bewusstseinskultur emphasizes the value of qualitative, the normal aspects of the mind, so how things feel to you, what it's like to experience things, how it is to be read rather than what you do with, seeing read. So if you think that this is valuable, if you emphasize this instead of taking down the culture, then you're more leaning towards Bewusstseinskultur. While the Funktionskultur stresses the values, functional, cognitive, or behavioral aspects of the mind. So functioning better, being faster, being stronger, doing less mistakes and calculations, all these kind of things. The interesting thing is that Bewusstseinskultur is more concerned with qualitative aspects of the mind, things that are really hard to measure or quantify, right? So how it feels like to see a nice sunset, right? The feeling of seeing the sunset itself is harder to measure than in comparison to, the amount of mistakes you make on your driver's license test. So Funktionskultur really goes more with being things concerned with the mind that we're able to measure. And I think both are on a continuum. So very often we'll have in one thing, certain people leaning more towards a Bewusstseinskultur and others leaning more towards a Funktionskultur. So let me give you an example. One is coffee. So I think lots of you drink coffee or any kind of other stimulants. There are two ways in which you can consume coffee, at least. One of them is cupping. You're getting the best coffee that you can for this year from different areas. You brew it in the right way. You smell it, you really try to get how it's like to have that cup of coffee. And then in this cupping procedure, the interesting thing is afterwards you spit it out. So you have nothing of the coffee, caffeine. Nearly nothing. So this, I would say, is a good example of the Bewusstseinskultur. It's more about how it feels like to taste this, what it's like to have this kind of cup of coffee. In contrast, you have something like bulletproof coffee, which is a mixture where you take a shot of espresso and mix it up in a blender with cleared butter. And the good thing with this is it gives you the high of caffeine, but without this kind of steep intake, right? Because the fat and the butter will somehow slow down the amount of coffee that is given off at any moment. So it's supposed to taste quite terrible if it's done bad. So this is not an enjoyable experience, but it's probably much better when it comes to functional intake of caffeine. So this is more of a Funktionskultur concerning coffee. You can do the same with, the same is probably there with, for example, how we deal with LSD. You can have a psychedelic approach to LSD or a microdosing approach. LSD. With psychedelic approaches, like with this kind of nice way of that thing, it's only about how things look, how it's like to be in a state, really enjoying, being on that trip, and all the kind of experience that come with it. Well, if you think about microdosing, the whole idea of microdosing is that it is not there in experience, that it does not give you the kind of trip-like qualities of LSD, but it makes you more creative, more sociable, more approachable, having more fun with stuff. So less of focusing on the experience, but rather more on function. That's why it's so prevalent in these kind of high-class functioning areas like Silicon Valley or this. So microdosing versus psychedelics might be also two ways of thinking about the Bewusstseinskultur, versus since you want to go to the culture emphasizing the value of phenomenal experiences, what it feels like, the sensations, versus a culture more focused with how you function, how you behave, how you think about things. So then let me go a little bit deeper. So what are actually the components of the Bewusstseinskultur? So the term Bewusstseinskultur was introduced by Thomas Metzinger, which is, you might have run into it at the Insight. So he writes, and I should rate this, that what matters is the cultural implementation of the new insights from the empirical sciences of consciousness. This broad horizon shall be captured by the name Bewusstseinskultur. So his idea is that it's a scientific, rational approach to the culture we live in. And this means different things. This encompasses, for example, a rational implementation of new insights, as well as new ways to intervene and act on the level of society as a whole. So the important thing is it's not supposed to be just willy-nilly, it's supposed to be more rational. So something that you can reason about, that you can give reasons for acting in this rather than another way. Unlike, for example, the example he always uses is current laws concerning psychoactive drugs, right? So there's nothing rational about which kind of drugs are allowed and which ones aren't. But in the Bewusstseinskultur, you would take a rational approach. But this also means that we take a tiny implementation of these scientific and technological developments into a cultural evolution. So we're not just taking these and rationalize and try to, see what our culture, what in our culture is reasonable or not, but we really try to change our culture and really make it into an evolution, get it into a different type of culture where the value of phenomenal experiences themselves are, well, at the forefront, let's say it like this. And for him, this encompasses three things. One is a Bewusstseinsethik, so an ethics concerning consciousness. And the other two are Anthropologie-Folgenabschätzung, so the idea of the new kind of view of humans in their place in nature is developed by the empirical mind sciences. And really implementing this view as being the correct view of us humans is also something that we should take to account when we do Bewusstseinskultur, how to best implement this kind of new view of ourselves. And lastly, has something called Technologie-Folgenabschätzung, meaning that we should think about all the kind of ways in which we can manipulate consciousness and how we should deal with those. I am mainly focusing here on Bewusstseinsethik, so the ethical part of consciousness. So the core is, I'm focusing on is the ethics for conscious states. So what this is supposed to mean? So very intuitive, some conscious states are seen to be of value to the person experiencing them due to how they feel. So some things feel bad, and that's why we think they have a lesser value than other things that feel good. They can sometimes be behaviorally, at a glance, hard to distinguish. Pains seem to be a very paradigmatic example of conscious experiences that feel bad, while orgasms might be a classical example of conscious states that feel good and that have value to us. So if some conscious states, pains, orgasms, tastes, smells, whatever, seem to be of value to the person experiencing them, due to how these feel, then ethics of consciousness, Bewusstseinsethik, would try to determine these values and try to catalog in order to give recommendations for how to act based on these values. So if pains are bad, then an ethics of consciousness would say, well, do this in order to avoid pain. If orgasms are good, then it would say, do this in order to increase the amount of orgasms that are there in the world. So this is a very, it's a very, basic way of formulating this, but you get a gist of the idea of what ethics of consciousness would be. Now I'm interested in the ethics of consciousness concerned with in the framework of Bewusstseinskultur, which is supposed to target society as a whole, right, on the level of society as a whole. So what we would need is then, the question that arises is, can we reasonably make ethical recommendations concerning conscious experience on the scale of society as a whole, right? And that would mean making general recommendations. So the question is, what is a general recommendation? So I would say roughly has this form. So for anybody, so it's not supposed to be very individually targeted methods. If they experience X, then this experience of X has a value Y, and thus we should act in a Z way. So this would be the kind of shape. So you say for anybody, if they have this kind of experience having a pain, then it has a negative value, and thus we should act in this way in order to avoid this type of experience. This is what I'm talking about. Is this kind of general recommendation possible? So now I think we should talk about complications, because I'm not really sure that we can have these general recommendations. So to do Bewusstseinsethik, we would need to justify these kind of general recommendations on the level of society as a whole. And for this, we would need an intersubjectively stable connection, so that for everybody, these connections are pretty much the same between specific experience on one hand, pains, orgasms, tastes, their external causes, what brings them about in you, and their specific values, what kind of value a pain will have, probably a negative one. So if we would need to say that these intersubjectively stable connections are really stable, that they're not, due to change and change between subjects and not change over time and all these kind of things, in order to make really this general recommendation that what we say holds for everyone. Now, I don't think that this is very reasonable, or that it actually holds. And I'm going to try to give 4 problems with this approach. The first one's mainly on variability. We know that individuals vary broadly in what experience they're having in the same type of environment, right? Think of you now, think of yourself under LSD, same external causes. You've changed, and you have totally different experiences. But it goes even down to less dramatic changes. This is a depiction of the distribution of differently coded cone cells on the retina of 5 different people. So you can see the distribution of blue to green coding to red coding cone cells. And you see that some of these really have drastic difference, like in the amount of cone cells, but also in the amount of cone cells of a specific type. And this affects how people, for example, see the world. So the very specific light of 550 nanometers is seen by the last person mainly as red, nearly ever as red, because it just excites the chance of this very specific photon hitting a red cone is really, really high. So very often this person will see red, where everybody else sees different colors, as you can see with YY or individual AP. So Bewusstseinskultur would mainly focus on external environments, right? Because this is what we actually target when we're talking about culture, right? We're talking about shared environments between us. Now, it looks as if the shared environment does not ensure that you're having a very specific type of experience. It's mainly what you bring to this shared environment, right? Whether you're high or not, whether you're having a different type of distribution of cone cells or not. So there's a huge variety of what people experience in a specific environment. So this raises the variability problem. If under the same external conditions, subject A and B experience differently, then we can only tentatively recommend specific environments to ensure specific states of consciousness. So it's only a rough guess what people will be having an experience like in a specific environment. Second thing is the transformativity problem. So Laurie Paul wrote a great book called Transformative Experiences, and she says that some experiences can actually change us. And this is a problem for rationally deciding whether we want to have them or not, because very often we don't know how they will change us. Having kids, going on a truck trip, all these kind of things really, really deeply change us. And there are two different ways in which they can change us. The first is it's epistemically transformative. Which was the please? Sure. I'm right in the middle of a talk. Give us 10 minutes. I've had this for the sorry. So this epistemically transformative thing. After experiencing, you know how this experience will feel like, but you didn't know before. So it's hard to decide whether you want to have an experience if you just don't know how it will feel. The second thing is, I think this is much more importantly, so it's personally transformative. An experience can change your value system. So before having kids, you might have valued your free time and being alone, and after you have kids, you rather stick around with them, and this gets more valued. So after experiencing something, your value system may change in comparison to before. And this is very important because it would raise the transformativity problem. So if experiences can change the subjective value system of the person in an unpredictable way, then we can hardly recommend that specific experience ought to be had or must be avoided due to their inherent value, because apparently these experiences don't have an inherent value. Two experiences of the same type can be valued as good or bad in different individuals, and these transformative experiences show this, even that they can vary in an individual subject. Before the experience, having had the experience, you might have this value, you attach this value to it, but after having had it, you have a different value attached to it. So there cannot be really a good kind of general recommendation for experience you should have if you don't know how you would value them after having had them. I hope this makes sense. So the last is a little bit of a more technical point. The anhedonicity problem. So the hedonic value, how you like it or not, is what we're talking about mainly. But we said that it's intuitive that experiences themselves have this kind of hedonic value. Now, Derek Parfit, in his big book on what matters, argued that they don't. It's actually not that an experience has a very specific value. It is that the experience itself doesn't have a value. It's our meta-hedonic attitude towards them. So whether we like them or not is what matters and gives them value. So, for example, think of eating blue cheese when you're young. I hated that. When I got older, I started to like it. So there might be things where you can say that the same experience gets the meta-hedonic attitude changes and may change. And so if the experiences themselves are not the carrier values, but attitudes that we have towards the experiences, then it raises the anhedonicity problem. If experiences themselves are ahedonic, they have no value. They're targeting experience in the way we set up our culture, might be an indirect way of targeting what matters. What matters is actually our meta-hedonic attitudes. And so thinking about how we can control these would be more of an importance. And then just targeting conscious experience would be, well, kind of a very indirect and maybe like missing the point kind of way of setting up a culture. The last I want to talk about is the eight-dimensionality of conscious experiences. So when we're thinking of consciousness as having a value, we think of them as having a value due to their meta-hedonic attitude. It could still be that an experience always has that type of attitude. or triggers that type of attitude towards it, like pain. Pain seems to be, you always have this kind of negative attitude towards them. If that's true, we could still set up a culture, but it seems like it's not the case. There could be good cases. Nick Block is one of the people who argues this. This is one of the big papers where he argues that phenomenal experiences, how things feel like, might be afunctional. That means that they're not necessarily tied to a specific external cause or a specific cognitive or behavioral effect. Now, if that's the case, then this would also apply to meta-hedonic attitudes, because there will be effects of having certain type of experiences. So here's an example of this. So some of you may have an experience of a full picture, and between these flashes, something is changing. But probably it will take a lot of time for you to, even though you're seeing the whole picture, even though you have a phenomenal expression of the picture as a whole, that it's hard for you to pick out what it actually is that's changing. I don't know if anybody has already seen the change, then raise your hand if you can. Right, you have. So some of you will, after a while, realize that it's the rating behind these two people that is changing quite dramatically, from being below eye height to above eye height. I got it. And so, so this is an example where you have a phenomenal experience, probably off that rating, because it's not like there's a blank that the rating is between these two flashes. But the change of that rating didn't have any kind of cognitive effect. You couldn't form a thought that this is what is changing, right? So this might be an illustration of why certain type of experience might be non-functional. So the afunctionality of phenomenal experiences, that they do not always have cognitive behavioral effects, raises another issue. So if phenomenal aspects of experience are not tied to specific causes or effects, and we can only tentatively control which experience a person has in an environment, this is the first part, the variability. You could still have bad dreams or bad trips or whatever. But it also means that the value assigned to an experience, which would be the effect of that experience, is also kind of tentatively grasped. It's not that there's a general way in which certain economic experiences will have certain effects. Now this, I think, really makes a problem because it would mean that we cannot have these general recommendations that a lot of people want from Bewusstseinskultur, saying that anybody should have, this kind of feeling towards the world, or opening up to the world in an LSD trip, therefore everybody should have an LSD trip, right? Or, well, everybody should have this feeling of total control of, pure consciousness. So everybody should go to have meditation in, every class or something. So we probably couldn't get these kind of general recommendations. If you're interested, I spell this out more concretely in this paper, the concept of Bewusstseinskultur. These kind of four problems are there to read, and it's an open access article. Now, I think what I just said is that Bewusstseinskultur can hardly be one of general recommendations about what not to experience. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a Bewusstseinskultur. We just wouldn't have a very authoritative Bewusstseinskultur that tells us which experience we should have. No, we would have a more liberal Bewusstseinskultur, where any kind of experience that you want to have is available to you. And the cultural environment, the social environment that we want to engineer is one where we try to give you as much control over the hedonic and cognitive effects of which experience as possible. So we would try to favor environments where we can learn to control the hedonic and cognitive effects of the experience, where you can control attention, where you can control how to distance yourself from bad experiences. This, I think, is a Bewusstseinskultur that is much more reasonable than expecting one of general recommendations. Thank you very much. I look forward to the questions, and thank you for coming to this very weird talk.